So here I have the Amanda Gorman article that's titled Words to Live By. Here she is, people, everyone. This is poet Amanda Gorman, and here's the text of her article in Allure magazine, where she's on the front cover. Amanda Gorman. One of Gorman's most celebrated foremothers, Gwendolyn Brooks, said that poetry is life distilled. Gorman's young life has already brought her strength, purpose, and the chance to shape a generation with her inimitable voice. By Jessica Proulx, photographed by Dejaneba Aduayom. So we're on the A list and we're beginning. I was just thinking about you. These are the first words that Amanda Gorman says when she sees me on the set of her Allure photo shoot. I have to resist the urge to scan the room to find out who she is speaking to, since she and I had only met once before for a total of 30 seconds. 2 months prior, we were both appearing on the Today Show. It seemed a coincidence. 2 black women with natural hair, wearing yellow dresses, taping segments one after the other. I for Allure's new crop of Best Beauty winners. Gorman for her children's book, Change Things. Of course, we did what our black mothers taught us and said hello. First, there was a nod of acknowledgement, then proper introductions. In some way, everything Gorman does has deep roots that she acknowledges, even putting on makeup. I read about the history of makeup on the stage and how, in part, it was used as a storytelling device, especially for a larger audience, she says. It makes your features a lot more apparent to a watcher who might feel distant. And I knew that this inauguration for many people was going to feel less intimate because it was all virtual. So having a vibrant makeup was a way for me to feel my best. But also a way that I wanted my face to make people feel a bit closer to me. In who I was and what I was saying. The thought that her personal story is one worth writing about requires a bit of vanity, and when I suggest this, Gorman takes time to consider her response, looking up to the sky as if the words she could say are written there. But this is an interview, not a poem, and she abandons the search for perfect phrasing. It's automatically kind of a vain thing to do, to say to yourself, I have thoughts and ideas that everyone should hear, she begins. But then I look around, and that's what white men have been doing for centuries. It's called leadership. It's called ambition. It's called inspiration. And when I do it, it's called vanity. I'm not necessarily doing it to just hear myself or convert oxygen into carbon dioxide. I'm doing it because I want to make a difference that goes beyond myself. In Gorman's recent collection of poems, Call Us What We Carry, she weaves together words that represent the overall human experience during a year of extreme isolation and the Black experience in a time of racial unrest. This might sound grim, but Gorman infuses a great amount of hope into her work at regular intervals. As a Black female poet, I think so many people expected my poems to be angry because of that schema. I'm like, yes, I have the right to be angry, but what I wanted to really have, freedom to speak with hope in the same way that male poets get to do. Why can't that voice of a people, a generation, come from someone who looks like me? So I have to ask, does she feel safe being spotlighted as a beacon of hope in America? Do I feel safe? No. It's very difficult, I'd say near impossible, to feel safe as a strong voice of color in the United States, Gorman says, especially given the violence that we see on a daily basis, both psychological and physical. I try not to be controlled by my fear, but informed by it. So if I'm really afraid, I know this terror is telling me that there's something to be gained from courage. Already a National Youth Poet Laureate, best-selling author, and inaugural sensation, Gorman recently added Estee Lauder Global Changemaker to her list of honors. I'm here because my mom championed me from the beginning when no one else would, Gorman says, after recounting a story of an elementary school teacher who underestimated her reading skills due to her disability and how her mom stepped in to straighten things out. I get so many comments about my confidence or the way I possess myself. And I was not just born this way. It was due to somebody else cultivating that in me. Gorman wanted to create works that reflected her world as a young Black woman when so much of the standard curriculum was focused on uplifting the classics, which is code for works by mostly white men. Why am I reading Herman Melville and not James Baldwin? She asks. Both are representative of the human experience. One just happens to be black. I wanted to not just absorb, but also create works by which I would have a window and a mirror, something that reflected what I knew to be true and represented the community I come from. When we sit down for our interview, I feel I am spending time with the latter person. She is still stately, even wearing a Bert and Ernie t shirt, but that solemnity is conveyed more through her words than her physical presence. When Gorman recounts her childhood, it sounds like a page torn from Little Women, twin sisters running around, recreating their imaginings as plays, painting visions of their world in watercolor, and for young Amanda, writing novellas and poems in her notebook. The family matriarch, Joan Wicks, a teacher, built a haven of creation that Marmee would envy. The primary difference being that the idyllic landscape was firmly rooted in Black culture. Gorman was nourished by the words of strong Black authors such as Rita Dove, Maya Angelou, and Gwendolyn Brooks. Before arriving in LA for this interview, I insisted to my mother that Gorman wouldn't remember our brief interaction. But as it turned out, she had been thinking of me, and since her appearance at the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in January 2021, I and many Americans have been thinking about Amanda Gorman. Watching Gorman that day transported me back to the Southern churches of my childhood, where pastors used hand gestures and voice inflections, even the occasional dance to invigorate the congregation. They weren't just preaching the gospel, they were rousing a community to action. If you look into the history of spoken word, especially poetry among the African American community, so much of that heritage comes from the Black church, Gorman says. I was raised Catholic, and my church St. Bridget Parish in LA, had a firm stronghold in the Black community that I was growing up in. I think those things influenced my poetry, and then even other aspects beyond it. Gorman does everything with intention. Even the way she holds her hands during a performance is choreographed. Having a speech impediment forced me to think creatively about the ways I was going to communicate on stage, she explains. It wasn't enough to just rely on my orality. I had to siphon other instruments. So, if I wasn't pronouncing a word correctly because of the speech impediment, people might be able to look at my hands and say, oh, she's saying running because she's making a motion with her index and middle fingers. Gorman brings that same grace to this cover shoot by placing hours before rolling up to the Capitol that day. Gorman applied highlighter and berry lip color herself. It was nerve-wracking, she recalls. I had that really scary moment of standing in front of my mirror in the hotel in DC and being like, I have no idea how to put on makeup on my face because I'm so scared. But putting on her own makeup and styling her hair for the stage is something that she has done for years, for many different performances. Typically, those moments of preparation are filled with bold feminist energy via the lyrics of her special makeup playlist, featuring Beyonce, Ariana Grande, and Dua Lipa. Learning to do her own hair and makeup was a process that allowed her to get acquainted with and embrace her beauty. When I first engaged with makeup, it was from the idea of personality. How does this represent me? And also, just like artistry and creativity. It was less about trying to cover who I was or trying to hide it. And more, no, I don't. Do you have my phone? I do not. And more so trying to lean into that and elevate it. But on Inauguration Day, her Prada coat and vertically styled braids were also there to make a point. The braids, too, were a powerful statement, Gorman says. I tried to play with having my hair go upwards, which I think is really a hallmark of black hair. Everything about me, even my hair, my body, and my spirit is about defying gravity. She was also honoring a tradition, thinking about the civil rights movement. They marched in their Sunday best, she says. People were getting arrested and beaten with their hair done, with their clothes pressed, with makeup on. My ancestors were very intentional about. Gorman wanted to create works that reflected her world as a young black woman when so much of the standard curriculum was focused on uplifting the classics, which is code for works by mostly white men. Why am I reading Herman Melville and not James Baldwin? She asks. Both are representative of the human experience. One just happens to be black. I wanted to not just absorb, but also create works by which I would have a window and a mirror, something that reflected what I knew to be true and represented the community I come from.